Super Stitch Nation, today we're here at Lifetime Fitness in Gilbert, Arizona, and the gym is shut down due to COVID-19, so it has afforded us the perfect opportunity to make a video without members getting in the way and music blaring in the background. My good friend here is the general manager, and she allowed us to come and do this video. So anyway, we're going to start, and this is going to be a long video. We're going to cover a lot of stuff, not just the lines, and this video will be applicable to sales reps, installers, maybe the seamstress a little bit, but it's going to encompass a lot of things. So you might have to watch it a couple times. So just bear with me. It's a repetitive thing. All this stuff will come with time. But anyway, the first thing we have here is a Techno Gym Flexibility Interior. And Techno Gym is made in Italy. And so they spell certain things differently in Europe. Flexibility here is spelled with an A instead of an I. And in our system, it's put in there twice. It's put in both ways. Most of the time, we'll put things in our system verbatim. So if you're a sales rep and you're doing a walkthrough at a gym, you need to just type in the machine as it's spelt out on the equipment, on the shrouds. They have two of these. This thing here, what do we got? This is flexibility posterior. We have the back pattern for this. We do not do the pillow. We just suggest that the customer buy the pillows from Techno Gym. We do have a pattern for the ankle slip cover, but not this. We recommend the customer buy this straight from the factory as well. Moving along, we have the Pre-Core Stretch Trainer. Pre-Core has about 5 or 6 lines. This thing is not in a particular line, it's just the stretch trainer. It's a standalone. We have patterns for the seat and the knee pad. And when you upholster this rubberized pad here, you have to put a piece of scrim foam on it first, or else the molding will crack the backside of the vinyl. It'll tear it from the backside. So the first time this gets upholstered, it needs some scrim foam on it. Down here, we have some abdominal equipment. This is the Pre-Core Ab X. Again, this doesn't have a line, and it's in the system as an Ab X. This piece here is a Cybex bent leg abdominal, and this is a VR2 line, and you could tell VR2 because the steel on the frame is 2" by 2" square stock steel. Now this is the only, Cybex is the only manufacturer that calls this a bent leg abdominal. Some manufacturers will call it a decline bench because it declines. Most of the time declines don't have ankle pads on them. Some people will call it a sit-up bench. When it comes to trainers and managers in the gym, they sometimes use different semantics for things, but this one here says it right on the side. It's the bent leg abdominal. Moving right along, we have some plinth tables. A lot of times at Lifetime, they'll call these stretch tables, but in a physical therapy place, it will be called a plinth table. This one's made by Dynatronics. Often it's hard to find a line on a plinth table. I'd say about 50% of them actually mention what they are. And we make these webbing hoods because the perimeters get beat up real bad. Amongst fitness equipment, you have 3 categories. You have selectorized equipment, you have plate load, and free weights. Here we have a Marpole rope pole. Marpole only makes about 5 or 6 pieces of equipment. The line is right on the machine. It's the VLT. And a lot of times manufacturers won't put the line on the equipment. That's why we're making the video, because you have to look at the way the thing was constructed. The steel, plastic shrouds, you'll see that here in a bit. Now we're coming up to free motion. This is the newest line in free motion. I've seen about 3 or 4 lines. Most of them don't have names. The original line is just called original sometimes if you ever see it anywhere. This one's the Genesis line. This is the first time I've seen them put multi-plane. We don't even have this in the system yet. This is so new. They changed these patterns around a little bit. When we make these patterns, we're probably not going to have all this stitching involved. We'll simplify it a bit. But the Genesis line is the newest line that we have so far in 2020. Coming up here, we have a Technogym Hyper Extension. Now, we actually took a pad off here because we're going to upholster this. We're going to pattern this for the customer. But the way this works is you get in the machine and it's a low back exercise. A lot of people don't know what this is called. You'll have fitness trainers and managers call this a Roman chair, but it's called a hyper extension. And this line is a pure strength hyper extension. Over here we have a piece of Life Fitness. Now Life Fitness is the biggest manufacturer of commercial equipment in the world. Their original line is Pro. That was coming out, I think, in the 90s. I started doing this in 2001 and Pro was out, and this here is Pro 2. And you could tell Pro 2 because the steel frame is 2 inches by 4 inches wide. Let's see, maybe, well, you just take my word for it. It's 4 inches wide, there we go. Then they came out with Signature Series. Signature Series has a tubular frame. And then they started coming out with Insignia. But this here is Pro 2. It's also really difficult to get this seat off, by the way. You need a 17mm ratchet wrench. And a lot of times when I put this back on, I only put the front 2 bolts in, or maybe the back 2. I can't remember what it is, but this thing is a real pain to take apart. Also, what we have here is a hip abduction. Abduction is always pushing the knees out, where the previous machine was an adduction and you push the knees in. Now, what's interesting is the right knee pad on the abduction is the same as the left knee pad on the adduction. So be careful when you're upholstering these, because you couldn't possibly pull off the wrong knee pad and your cover that you got sent out with won't fit. Here we have the latest line of Life Fitness. This one is Insignia. Most always, Insignia has a black plastic cap on the top, and it is the tubular steel. It's approximately 2 by 4, I want to say, maybe 5 inches, and then they got this smaller tube here. But a lot of these pads are actually from the Signature Series line. For instance, this seat is the same seat used on the Signature Series torso rotation. However, and see these knee pads, these are the same as the Pro 2 knee pads, so they've reused this pattern on this line. Now you'll have other pads, let me move around here. This pad, this back pad right here, is only in Insignia. You will not see this on Pro 2, and look, it's actually on here loose, which brings me to another point. When you're bolting on pads, the most common thing that I see with new installers is that they will not get the pads on tight enough, or they'll think they're tight because the impact gun is making a noise, a ratcheting impact noise, but you don't want to have a general manager call you back in a week or two because pads are falling off the equipment. This actually happens quite a bit. Moving right along, we have another hip adduction. And here we have the Life Fitness Signature Series torso rotation. Signature Series is the first line of Life Fitness that came out with the tube steel. And unlike the Insignia, the cap on the top does not cover the whole top. You have the steel that comes up on the side and then a plastic shroud in the middle. This pad right here is specific to Signature Series. You will not see this on Insignia or Pro 2 or anything else. Here, this knee pad, this is the same as the seat that we just saw over there on the Insignia abduction, or the hip abduction seat. This is a real pain to get this pad off. There's 2 bolts down here. You can just pull this lever up. I move this thing around a lot to make it easier for me to get to it. But what I've found is there's typically, okay, here I can feel it, there's an Allen wrench bolt down there. It's probably a 7mm, sometimes it's an 8, or sometimes it's a 17mm hex head bolt. But I always use a 3-inch extension on a ratchet and put the the correct tip on there and get up in there and take it out. Sometimes I'll even take, if it's never been upholstered, I'll take a Sharpie. There's a metal plate down here, and I'll run a black Sharpie around it, so it makes it easier for me to line the pad up correctly when I go to bolt it on. Another thing that gets tricky is you really got to make sure the back side of this knee pad has a curve to it, and then the front side has an inside curve. And it's very easy to put this on backwards when you get into the gym. So a lot of times I'll mark one side on the plate with a Sharpie and just put the letter B there, and then when I take the or A, any letter or number, and then when I take the pad off, I mark the same letter or number. That way when I get back, because to be 100% honest, I still can't remember which way this is supposed to be on. This might be on wrong right now. I don't know. Okay, now we have Icarian. This is a Precor machine. That's the manufacturer, and Icarian is the line. Now, sometimes you'll see Icarian and it won't say Precor on it at all. And I think what happened was Precor bought out Icarian, and then they made Icarian one of their lines. Now this one is the Abdominal Isolator 712. And in our system, we use model numbers. That's like a blessing right there. But we put them at the front. So if you're typing out a sales order, you can just put in 712, and more than likely, it's just gonna pull up this machine right here. Okay, now we have hoist. This line is the rocket line. It doesn't say rocket on this machine, it says rock abs. It's duplicated in our system, once as a rocket and once as a rock abs, so you can find it. In our system, we don't use the hyphen or the bullet points on rocket, I think. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but this is the newest line of hoist. I haven't seen any new equipment from Hoist for a very long time. They have a Hoist CL line. I think it was made in the 80s. That's down at the EOS in Ahwatukee. But there's that. Now we have a free motion abdominal. This is Genesis. There's two other abdominal machines that look just like this. They all have this little pillow on here for a lumbar support. Goes here. We just suggest that the customer buy these new from the factory because it takes a very long time to sew this, and they can get it cheaper online. Now, one thing to notice about this pad is it's got a triangular top. This and the previous line have a triangular top. The original line, the top looks just like the bottom, so the pad can be reversed. But for us, we put the seam at the bottom, and I've come back to job sites and seen this thing mounted upside down, so be careful always to put the triangle at the top. Okay, our next line is hoist again. Now here is where it says rocket. And notice there's no K, and there's a little decimal point there, or a bullet point rather. So in our system, there's no bullet point, and we don't use a K. We spell it just like they do, especially when it comes with the S at the end of biceps curl. I would never call this a biceps curl. I call it a bicep curl, but whatever. We just match what the manufacturer says. Okay, another Precor Icarian machine. Bicep curl. See, this one actually doesn't have an S on it. Bicep curl, 205. I would just type in, if I was typing out the order on this job, I'd just type in 205 and this thing will pop right up. And this pad goes out a lot. This is actually a pretty technical pad to pattern, but we got a pretty good pattern in the shop, and it should always get a slip cover. Bicep curls almost always get slip covers. If it's a club that has a lot of members, sometimes we'll put 2 of these on here. Or if they're using Olympus, this one's in color guard, so it's really strong. But again, Life Fitness Pro 2 biceps curl. We know it's Pro 2 again because it's a 2x4 frame. Now notice on this seat here, we have a seam, and it's on the front. The seams always face somewhere where a member can't see it. Now the tricep press has a back pad on it with a big steel frame, so the seam goes in the back. So you gotta be careful that you're using the correct patterns. If we had a biceps curl in this gym and a tricep press, and they both had bad seats, you wanna make sure to get the seam on the right spot. Okay, so free motion Genesis biceps. We don't have this in the system yet, but we do have the second generation, and sometimes this machine, the bicep curl, the original line has no arm pad, it's just a seat. And then the second generation, there's one model that has an arm pad and another one doesn't. So the semantics are set up in the system so you can identify that. Triceps, nothing special about that thing. Here we have Precor Icarian 210 flat tricep extension. So just type in 210 and notice the arm pad on this is the exact same pattern as the 205 bicep curl. Here's a pretty unique one. Precor Icarian tricep extension 208. This arm pad's different than the 205. Hoist rocket seated dip. Okay, Matrix. Now Matrix, they make these goofy rolls that have zippers in them, and there's nowhere to staple. So we just tell the customer to buy these new from the factory. Sometimes you can find an aftermarket spot to find these, but I don't mess around with a zipper foot or this. I've tried this a couple of times and never been able to make it work. But as far as this line is concerned, this is G2, I believe. Oh, it's G3. Now on Matrix, they're pretty good about putting a serial number on here, and the first two digits have identified the line. They make a G1, a G2, and a G3, and they all look almost exactly the same, and this is the only way you're going to be able to find the difference in those lines. Okay, Cybex Prestige. Prestige, I love it because it says Prestige right on it. You can't really mistake it for anything. This is the back extension. Now, 90% of the time, back extensions will always be selectorized equipment. You'll never see a piece of selectorized meaning it has a tower with a pin. That makes it selectorized. You'll never see a selectorized called a hyperextension. And vice versa, the hyperextension's not really called a back extension that often. Here we have a piece of Hammer Select. Now, some inside information. Hammer Strength is actually owned by Life Fitness. And a lot of people don't know that. But now that I've told you, you probably noticed that this steel is 4x2 or 2x4, just like the Pro 2. And that's because Life Fitness decided to quit making Pro 2 and they just renamed it to Hammer Select. So these have the same exact pads as the Pro 2. Everything is the same. Everything is the same. Hammer Select is basically Pro 2. Now notice it doesn't say Select on there, so you're just gonna have to know that. And this is the assisted dip machine. A lot of times we put slip covers on these wear out pretty fast. And the bolt holes are symmetrical, so you can flip these around. Hammer Select pectoral fly rear delt. I think this is double entered in our system because depending on the manufacturer, there's about 4 ways people call this machine. I think we most often call it a pec fly rear delt. We just call them all that because people just have all kinds of names for these. Now this one can be tricky because the seam goes on the bottom, but the bolt holes are down here. So you can't flip this one upside down. So you got to make sure that when you pull this pad off, you make a Sharpie line where you want that seam to go, or else you're going to end up with the seam up here. Okay, they have 2 of those here, Hammer Select. Here we have Cybex Eagle NX, and they will always have that on the plate. They make an Eagle line and an Eagle NX. This is the chest press machine. I'm pretty sure this pad here is specific to Eagle NX. I don't think you'll find this on Eagle or VR3 or VR2 or Classic or Original. Cybex has a god-awful amount of lines. Now this seat, however, is also on the VR3. This is a pretty common seat. Okay, we have Technogym Selection. This is original line of Technogym. This is the first line they ever came out with. And Selection does, now their original line does say on the back here of this shroud, it says Selection, but the newer lines don't say that. But they reuse, the newer line uses these same patterns. This saddle seat can be tricky. Definitely gonna need a heat gun to staple that one on. Life Fitness Signature Series. Notice it doesn't say it on there. Tubular steel. Remember, this is that same knee pad that was on the torso rotation. This back pad is only Signature Series. The other one on the Insignia looked different. Saddle seat. Ironically enough, this saddle seat from Signature Series will fit the Techno Gym line, even though there's no relation. Now, notice this chest press has a cable setup. So in the system, it references the cables. That's because if there's another chest press that's a standard one, sometimes the customer will want this seat done. In fact, this seat does need to be done. But if you send a guy out here with this pattern and it just says chest press and it doesn't reference cables, he might install the cover on the wrong machine. Another piece of Techno Gym selection. Another piece of Precor Icarian. Now here we got a little bit of trouble. The plate has been taken off. Normally it would say the line and the model number here, but now your product knowledge comes into play. You actually have to know that this is a shoulder press. You can tell because you're pressing up opposed to a chest press, which would be pressing straight forward. That one could trip you up. Hoist, rocket, shoulder press, pretty straightforward. Life Fitness Insignia, big black plastic cap, tubular steel. This chest pad is also used on the Pro 2 line, and I think these are used on the Pro 2 and Signature Series, at least the Signature Series, but this pattern right here is definitely Insignia only. Life Fitness Pro 2 shoulder press. There's that same seat. This was on the biceps curl and the tricep extension. Notice the seams on the back. Techno Gym Selection upper back. This is the only machine that uses that pattern. Saddle seat. Now here we got Life Fitness Signature Series row. Now, Life Fitness has not done us any favors with this. When I was a younger buck, we always just called this a cable row because there's obviously cables. But now they've used some semantics we'll see later today. It's called a low row. There's one called a dual pulley row, I think it's called. But those are on a multi-station that has lat pull downs and dual pulley pull downs on it. This is a standalone. This one can get tricky, but fortunately, all the patterns are the same. They're all gonna be 36 by 11. But if you don't put the right semantics, somebody might accidentally upholster the low row or the cable row. So this would be the Life Fitness Signature Series cable row. Life Fitness Pro 2 seated row. Here's that same chest pad that we just saw moments ago on the Insignia. Here's that same seat. Life Fitness Insignia pull down. Some manufacturers put a space between pull and down, some don't. It's important. If you're looking through the system for it and you put a space there, you're gonna have a hard time. Techno Gym Selection Vertical Traction. When I type this one out, I just put in vertical traction because I don't know anybody else that makes a vertical traction. Makes it a little faster for me to find it in the system. Life Fitness Signature Series pull down. Hammer Select assisted dip. Knee pad. Now here we have a Cybex VR3 standing calf. Now the older, more original Cybex will actually say VR3 somewhere on it. This one doesn't. The way you could tell VR3 is the VR3s have these black plastic caps up here, one on both sides. VR1 has just one big black plastic cap. Those are mainly at U-Fits. We'll move along to the leg machines. Here is the Life Fitness Insignia glute. You go like this. This one could be flipped upside down. It always seems to crack on the top here. The bolts are symmetrical. Each side is about 2 inches from the top, but this bolt is really hard to get to. The manufacturer put it like super close to the frame. It's only 1.5 inches. I can't even get in here with a hand Allen wrench, so a lot of times I'll take a pair of channel locks and just get this thing loosened up. All right, moving right along, we have the Cybex Eagle NX calf. Here's that same back pad. This is not the same back pad. This one's a little bit smaller, but this is only on Eagle NX. This is a very common seat. You'll find this a lot on the VR3 lines. Hoist, rocket, prone leg curl. Now the thing about the prone leg curls are they hardly ever say prone on the machine. This is a good example actually. It does say prone, but a prone leg curl is any machine where you're going to be lying down and curling this way, opposed to a seated leg curl, which we'll see here in a minute. Here we have Life Fitness, perfect example. Pro 2, see how it just says leg curl, but this guy's laying down. This is in fact a prone leg curl, but it doesn't say so. So I think this is double entered in our system twice. Once is a leg curl and once is a prone leg curl, just in case you put it in there that way. Cybex Prestige seated leg curl. Pretty straightforward. Now, one thing that has been a little bit difficult about the Cybex is they make one ankle pad that is 5 inches wide by 3 inches, and it's a crescent shape, opposed to another one that's a little bit skinnier. I would say it's about 4 inches wide, probably the same height, but it's more of a rectangle. So in the system, there is some semantics in there as far as crescent shape, just to make sure you pick the right pattern. And another side note about these machines, almost every leg extension or leg curl, the members kick the edge of the pad, so hardly ever do they wear out right on the surface. They normally just kick the edge and it gets beat up, and the bolt holes on these are normally pretty symmetrical, so you can just flip the pad and the owner of the gym can get a little bit more wear out of these pads. Here we have a Life Fitness Pro 2 leg extension. Notice it doesn't say seated, but almost every single leg extension is seated, so it's not necessary. Ankle rolls, this one again, normally will get beat up on the side. We have a slip cover on here that we just started making. It works out pretty well. Hoist rocket leg extension. They're about ready to take this equipment out of here because it's not 6 feet apart. COVID-19 stuff going on. Free motion Genesis squat. Now this shoulder pad on this machine is a doozy. Notice how the seam is facing out. This should be not this way. This should be mounted so the seam is facing the back. Our pattern, the seams are actually on the side. I like to put them facing in towards the member's head. That way when you're walking around the machine, you don't see the seam. This is a new back pad I haven't done, but the older generations have 2 sizes. So I like to carry a tape measure around when I'm doing my walkthroughs, because one of them I think is 24 inches and the other one is about 28. So that's tripped us up a couple of times. Here we have Technogym Selection Leg Press. This is the newer line, and same patterns as original Selection, except, oh, it doesn't say Selection anywhere on it. Not even on the back of the shroud does it say Selection. Hammer Strength Seated Leg Press. This is the Selection line. Again, just like Pro 2, the Pro 2 has the same exact patterns on it. So we'll move on over to the plate loaded section. Okay, now we're into the plate loaded section. Plate loaded means you load plates on the machine. What a surprise. There's no pins, there's no pulleys, there's some pivot points. It's not free weights, but it's plate loaded. Okay, this is Technogym Pure Strength pull down. That's what this is. Okay, so notice pull down is in 2 words on this line. And it doesn't say Pure Strength on it, but every single piece of Pure Strength that I've seen, as far as the plate loaded line is concerned, has 2-tone, black and white frame. And it almost always comes with black vinyl. I've color changed a few to red. I don't know why it only comes in black, but that's just the way it is. Now they've started making pure strength free weight equipment. And it would have been nice if there would have been black and white on the frame, but it's not. It's all white, and we'll see that in a bit. Techno Gym, pure strength, low row. Now, the original upholstery does say pure strength. So if you're coming up to it on the first time, this will be quite easy. But if it's been upholstered, I mean, we're not putting this on there. So you're gonna have to know what line this is. Here we have the Techno Gym Pure Strength Chest Press. And then the Pure Strength Incline Chest Press. Same back pads, same seats. Techno Gym Pure Strength Shoulder Press, same back pad, same seat. Now we're back into this older Precor stuff, Precor Icarian. Now, this you will have to know the name of. It's very common. It's a Roman chair. That's what we call it. Some people call it the leg extension. Some people call it the captain's chair. Some people even call it a hyperextension, but that's not what it is. It's a Roman chair. And this one you don't see very often either. This is called a T-bar row. Bodymaster makes one, Precor makes one, but you go like this. You put a plate on it. It's for your upper back or maybe middle back. That's how that exercise works. The Bodymaster one actually has two different sizes, two chest sizes. Okay, Life Fitness Signature Series row. It's a plate-loaded row. Don't see this one very often. Nautilus glute driver. Now Nautilus has their original line. It has a chain pulley system. They don't have cables. They came out with Nautilus Nitro. Then they came out with Nautilus Nitro Plus. And then they went out of business and they were bought by a company called MedX. And I haven't seen anything from Nautilus for about 5 to 10 years until this thing started coming out. The glute driver. I have yet to upholster one. Techno Gym Pure Strength leg press. Pretty straightforward. Precor Discovery hack squat. Discovery is their newest line that they have out. It's got a lot of tubular steel on it. This one doesn't say Discovery on it. This one's gonna be tough to identify. Even the Selectorized equipment doesn't say Discovery on it. Techno Gym Pure Strength linear leg press. Right there, linear. Hammer Strength also makes something called the ISO linear leg press. Now this seat is easier to get off of here if you lift this up and pull this down. And that happens a lot. On some equipment, if you're having a hard time getting the pads off, see if you can pull some pins and move some things around. Okay. Here, what is this thing called? It's been a while. Precor Icarian Super Squat 624. Has the model number right there. This thing's really popular. These shoulder pads are what go off the most. These things are always cracking. They're kind of hard to get off. You need a handheld Allen for the backside. These shoulder pads rarely ever go bad. I've only upholstered this thing about 2 or 3 times. There's a lot of outside backs on this thing. So if you ever, I've color changed one of these and it's a lot of work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 back pads, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 12 things to upholster on this machine. Very time consuming. Okay, here we have some original hammer strength. We call this the ISO line. And the reason for that is most of the equipment in this line is called, it'll say ISO lateral chest press or ISO lateral shoulder press or ISO something. So we just called it all the ISO line because hammer doesn't actually have a name for it. And if you want, if you can maybe get around here and check this out, there's a name tag right on it, but it doesn't say ISO anywhere on it. And neither does there's a seated calf in this gym. That also doesn't say ISO on it. So I think what we'll do now is we'll go ahead on over to this multi-station and take a look and see what's going on here. This is a Life Fitness Signature Series multi-station. Some general managers call these a tree. Not sure about why they call it that yet, but tubular steel. Again, here's that same seat that was on the Signature Series cable row. Now this one is called the dual pulley row. It says right here, dual pulley row. And the reason for that is because it has dual cables. There's two handles here. Down there, there's just a low row. So we'll get to that in a minute. But first we'll talk about this one here, a dual pulley pull down. It's basically a lat pull down. Works your upper lats. This guy was pretty buff apparently. Okay, here we have almost the same machine, but this one is called the lat pull down. And it just has one cable on it. But if you'll notice, those knee rolls are the same. That seat is the same. So when you're an installer, you kind of got to be careful, and the sales rep has to be careful to make sure they're putting down the right machine, or else the installer might put the cover on the wrong unit. All right, here's that low row, the Life Fitness Signature Series low row. Again, same seat. What did we say that thing was, 36? Yeah, about 36 by 11. Okay, now we're gonna get into some free weight stuff. Free weights are often the hardest thing to identify in the gym. So a lot of times I like to start out in the selectorized area. That way when the installer gets there, he can just get on a roll, especially if he's working with a partner, he's got somebody else there helping him, because sometimes they'll get tripped up in the free weights. So here we have a Precor Discovery. I call it an adjustable decline sit-up. And that's kind of a mouthful, but it's because a lot of times people will call this, like we talked about earlier when we were talking about that bent leg abdominal, people will call this the decline, or they'll call it a sit-up bench or whatever. So oftentimes I just call it the adjustable decline sit-up because it adjusts. Okay, now here, we already saw this over by the selectorized equipment. This is a Technogym Pure Strength Hyper Extension. So it doesn't say Pure Strength on it, and there's no black steel on this, opposed to the plate loaded stuff, which is much easier to identify. And also this stuff doesn't actually, nowhere on this free weight stuff have I ever seen a pure strength tag on it. Okay, now we're gonna get into the Olympic benches. This is called an Olympic bar. It weighs 45 pounds. Anytime there's an Olympic bar on a machine, it's called an Olympic something, Olympic flat bench. We'll get to some Olympic inclines. They have an Olympic decline here. They have an Olympic military press here. This is like one of the most famous popular exercises you're ever gonna do in the gym. Olympic flat bench. Now, Technogym has decided to raise the foam on one end of this bench. I don't know if you can see it there, but it's different. I've never seen it. I don't think it's gonna go over very well. The Gilbert location actually has it to where the raised foam is down here by where the legs go. I think it's on upside down. I've only been doing these for about 6 months, so I'm not actually sure where it's supposed to go. And a lot of times what you're gonna find in powerlifting is the powerlifters don't even want slip covers on these things because it claims that the extra layer of vinyl pushes their head forward. And we're talking about, you know, a 1/16 of an inch. So I don't see this design going very well. You do need a 17 millimeter ratchet wrench to get this off. There's a lot of bolts in this thing. So they have 4 of these. Here we have a unique piece of equipment. This is the Olympic military press. This is made by Technogym and it's the Pure Strength line. And here we go, Technogym right there. Now this is very uncommon. It's not often that you find these. And they make something similar that doesn't have the bar. It's called the utility bench. This is not the Olympic utility bench. It's Olympic military press. Here we have Life Fitness. Now this is tricky because is it Signature Series or is it Insignia? There's no plastic cap, we can't tell. We know it's one of those two because it has the rounded steel. But here's the giveaway, is this pad right here is only found in the Signature line, Signature Series. Insignia does not use this pattern. So that is a Life Fitness Signature Series Olympic incline, and they have 2 of them. Now we have an Olympic decline, Techno Gym, pure strength. Again, Olympic because of the bar. They've already got a manufacturer defect in this machine. Somewhere in here, there's a cut in the foam, and oftentimes you'll come to this, there it is, and the foam is already pushed down. So I used to have a foam guy, and it just got to be a pain, so I just now tell the customer to get these new from the factory. I'm sure in a little while, Techno Gym will be notified that their design is flawed and they'll recreate this. Okay, now we're gonna get into like freestanding benches. And this can be a little bit tough. We'll go ahead and start back here with the Techno Gym Pure Strength multi-adjustable seat and or back pad. I normally always put a slipcover on these. The greasy hair products end up cracking the vinyl pretty quick. Now, there's a lot of names for this machine. And this is where our company semantics come in. Some people will call it an adjustable incline. Precore's website calls it a 0 to 90 super bench. So some people will call it a 0 to 90. It's not very often, but the adjustable incline or the multi-adjustable. And here's the reason why we use those two. On the multi-adjustable, the thing has multiple adjustments. The seat adjusts independently from the back pad. If the seat is fixed to the back pad, normally it will be in a 90-degree angle. Flex makes a line like this. They have a multi-adjustable and then they have the adjustable incline. So the adjustable incline just adjusts the back and the seat normally follows. The seat is not adjustable, it's an adjustable incline. Here we have Precore Discovery Utility Bench. We know it's Discovery because of the tubular steel. Now this has been called other things than the utility bench. It's been called the utility stool. My uncle used to call this a 90-degree bench because it's in a 90 degree. Most manufacturer websites will call it a utility bench. So we just started using utility bench across the line regardless of what the manufacturer calls it. Back here we have a Precore Icarian standing preacher curl. Preacher curl is the key term for this. And it's standing because there is no seat. You stand up and do a bicep curl like this. Now, preacher curl is a term that's not used very often, but you will never see a piece of selectorized or plate-loaded equipment called a preacher curl. I've never seen it in my life. It's always an arm curl or a bicep curl or a biceps curl. So preacher, the word preacher identifies the fact that this is a free weight machine. And right next to it, we have a seated preacher. This is the Techno Gym Pure Strength Seated Preacher Curl. This is the one I use at the gym. Obviously you can tell. But it has a very wide pad. I think this is exceptionally large. It seems like Techno Gym is using a closed cell foam, which probably won't hold up very long. I always like to use, closed cell foam is what I like to use. I think this is open cell foam. It's a lot softer. We use open cell foam in the restaurants. Okay, they actually have 2 of these seated preacher curls. This one actually needs to be done, and we'll put a slip cover on this. I always put slip covers on preacher curls and Roman chairs because they're the highest used machines in the gym. Here we have another Precore Discovery Utility Bench and another Techno Gym Pure Strength Multi-Adjustable. And now we're done. There we go. So that was a lot to absorb. I know that's a lot of information. Feel free to watch the video a couple times, but understand that this is going to take a while to learn. It's going to take a while to learn, so just keep practicing and you'll figure it out.